Next, we're going to jump into something that might be unexpected. Rather than moving along to snapping and work planes and all that kind of stuff, we're actually going to go straight into retopology. And that word in itself strikes fear in the hearts of many new Moto users. But trust me, retopology is not as complicated as the big long word makes it sound, and it's actually an incredibly powerful way of modeling. Okay? I think when people, if you know what retopology is, those who do know what it is, tend to think of it as a post process. It's something to do with after you've finished your sculpt, then you would go and retopologize it for video game graphics or something like that. But in Moto, retopology is so much more than that. We can use it as a modeling tool, and that's what we're going to do right now. So let's go to wireframe mode and go to a side view, and let's talk about this cockpit cutout, for example. Now we want to cut the cockpit out such that the overall shape of our geometry stays roughly the same. We really don't want that to change at all. In fact, we want it to stay very consistent and very smooth. But we do need to make a change that cuts across the topology of our mesh. You can see that this there's no way we can rearrange these edges such that they'll follow this without messing up the curvature of our body. So to get started, we're going to head to the Topo tab. That is the Topology tab. Topology is just really the patch layout. It's the layout of the edges themselves and the way that they flow around the model. That's all topology means. It's nothing that fancy. Now, to do this, first we're going to have to create a new mesh item. We're going to need two mesh items. So far, we've been working in a single one. We're going to need a new one. Let's go to Add Item, Mesh, or you could do that using N on the keyboard, N as in new. That would drop in a new mesh item as well. And we can see that our new mesh item is grayed out because it is currently empty, while our old mesh item is black because it is full of our polys. So let's rename this our body buck, because really that's what this is. It's really a buck. It's a stand. It's a scaffold. It's something that we're going to build our real geometry onto. And then I'm going to go to the right view. And actually, many of these polygons can stay pretty much the same. I don't really need to change them. So I'm going to select all of these polys that are pretty much fixed, like so. I'm using the middle mouse and holding Shift to select all those polys. I'll hit Control-C to copy those. We'll head to our new mesh and Control-V to paste them in. Now, by default, in the Topology tab, the background mesh item is going to be set to shaded mode, which in our case is not ideal because we can't see the backdrop image behind there. So let's go up to the Viewport Properties drop-down. We'll head down to the Inactive Meshes tab, head up to Shading Style, and set that to Wireframe. Now we'll still be able to see the background, and we'll see inactive meshes and the background. They're both visible to us. Now, the next thing is to actually draw on top of this surface. And to make this a little more obvious, I'm actually going to create a new document here and just explain a little bit about the Topology tab and what it means as we work in it. So let's hold, I'm going to open up the model tools for a second here. Hold Shift and drop in a unit primitive into our new document. And then I'll grab our blank mesh item, thus resigning our sphere to the background, right, or to inactive status. So we're working in a blank mesh. Now let's grab the Topology pen. And the Topology pen is essentially about 8 or 10 tools in one. It is an incredibly powerful tool with lots of different options and sub-options and keyboard shortcuts, and it's kind of a power user tool. You really have to learn to use it. But once you do, it is an unbelievably great tool, and there is so much you can do with it. So the first thing we do with the Topology pen is hold the Control key and drag in the viewport. Now, sometimes that might snap to an odd place. Just undo it and then Control drag again, and usually that will fix the problem. There are some tolerancing issues you'll occasionally get, especially when you're first starting out with the Topology pen, but generally it works pretty well. Make sure that symmetry is turned off, by the way. It's not going to work well with that. But you can see that what we've done is create a polygon that has snapped itself to that background mesh. So if I hold the Shift key and drag an edge, it's going to duplicate that edge and extrude it out, but most importantly, all of those vertices are sticking to that background mesh. If I hold Shift and right mouse drag, I can get an entire edge loop at once. So you can see how very rapidly I'm able to start pulling out topology that matches the underlying shape in whatever arbitrary patch layout I want. Now, there's a lot more to this tool. There are so many things we can do with it, and I definitely recommend heading to Help, Inline Help System, typing Topology Pen into the keyword search, and then looking down toward the middle, you'll find a bunch of useful shortcuts for how to use this pen. And I definitely recommend taking the time to peruse this and feel comfortable with the topology pen. Because like I said, even if you're not doing character design or anything like that, retopology is an extremely important part of a good modeling workflow in Modo. So let's actually close this and head back to our initial document here. We'll select the new mesh that we're working on. And essentially what we're going to do is draw polys around where we want the edges of the cockpit to fall. But we need to have the same number of edges there that we have on our existing mesh. So let's double-click to select this edge loop. And then look at the bottom right corner of the viewport and notice we have 28 edges selected. Half of that is 14. We're going to be working in halves. We're going to work on half of this model at a time. So we need to make sure 14 edges span around all the way around this cockpit. Okay, so let's go to the right view. Again, make sure symmetry is turned off. Grab the topology pen and control drag to get started. Once again, it has snapped me off to the side. This appears to be some kind of bug in my current version, but if I hit undo and then control drag, that does seem to fix the problem. So if you have any issues, just try undoing it and try it again. Now, again, this is our first edge. We need 14 total. So I'm going to shift drag to create one. And then notice this is roughly lining up with this one down here. So I'll shift drag again, because this one also is going to roughly line up with the one below it. And let's keep this relatively narrow, actually, for now. I don't want it to be quite so big. I'll shift drag this one, lining up with the poly beneath it, roughly. Shift drag this one up. Again, I'm going to pivot this so that it's facing this poly down here. We're going to next have to connect with that one, so let's keep that one in mind as we do the next edge. I'm going to shift drag that over, watching that I'm staying lined up here. Shift drag so that we're staying lined up with this one. Shift drag this one. Keep it lined up with this guy. Let's go back to perspective mode. And then shift drag one more of these right on up so that we're right in line with the top there. Okay? And then we'll come up to here. That looks pretty good. And one more right up to the top. Oh, looks like there's one more. Perfect. So now, if I were to go to edge selection mode, click one edge, shift click the next one, and hit the up arrow to expand that selection all the way down, that is 12 edges, not 14, so clearly I've messed something up. Well, if I look from the top view, looks like I definitely missed one on this end. So let's go to topology pen, shift drag this guy over. That's looking pretty good. And somewhere in here we've missed a matching. Oh, here's where it is. I see it. So right here, I've got this point match. Let's go to vertex selection mode. This point matches with this one, right? And then this one matches with actually both of these, because then this one matches with that. So what we need to do is grab our topo pen again. Left mouse drag just moves an edge, which is perfect. We'll just move that down a little bit. And then to split an edge, shift middle mouse, and that will split the edge. Then I can move that over. Now we have an extra point that lines up with that one. So you can see just how amazingly powerful this tool becomes for creating whatever shape we need to. Let's move this stuff so that we're lining up again with our profile, make sure everything is looking nice and clean. And that should do it. Okay, next we need to actually connect this in with the rest of the mesh. Okay, so let's grab our topology pen again, And all I'm going to do is shift drag from one side to the other. I can also shift right drag to get the entire loop, bonk. And look, it acts like a bridge tool, and it actually went around and connected everything for me all at once. Now, we just created a problem for ourselves, and this is a problem that you're going to have to learn how to fix anyway. So let's go back to the Model tab for a second. I'm going to hide that buck mesh and hide our backdrop items, and let's talk about fixing a very common problem here in Modo. That problem is that, as you can see, we were working with a sub-D mesh, and then we did retopology, which did not subdivide those polys, and then we connected them to our sub-D mesh. So double-clicking this is going to get all of these guys, because they are connected. But notice that these ones are not smooth, and these ones are, and therefore they don't really match up visually. Fixing that is pretty straightforward, but you do have to know how to do it. So let's go down to our Lists tab here in the Model view. I'm going to actually expand that up by hitting 0 on the numpad. Go down to the very bottom pane here under Statistics and expand it up. Then head down to Polygon and expand that. By Type and expand that. And notice that we have 28 faces and 437 subdivs. All we have to do is select the faces by hitting the plus sign to the left of the word faces. Then we can hit Tab, and those become subdivs. Deselect. Now we have 0 faces and 465 subdivs. All right, so there we go. That has fixed our mesh. Looks good. The only thing left is that this new geometry was only created on one side. We didn't create it on both sides. So let's go to the top view. And I'm going to, first of all, hit Tab to unsmooth this. So first, we need to make sure that all of these center vertices are centered. So I'm going to select these vertices with the middle mouse lasso. And notice as I zoom in here, not all of these are perfectly on 0 on the X, and they should be for a symmetrical model, right? So let's select all those, head up to the Geometry menu, down to Vertex, and down to Set Position. Then under the X-axis, we're going to set those to 0, hit OK, and that'll do the trick. Now these guys are all set to 0. Perfect. Now we just need to mirror those across. So let's select all of these polys that we just created. I'm just going to paint select them because it's easy to do that way. And then head over to the Duplicate tab and run the Mirror command. Click in the viewport. And that's going to activate the tool and give you a handle. Make sure that we're mirroring on the X-axis here in the tool properties. And then you should be able to drag interactively to adjust this tool. Make sure that the center on the X is set to 0. And if we've done everything correctly, when we hit Escape to drop the tool and Escape to drop the selection and hit Tab, everything should all just match up perfectly. If it doesn't, just try again. And then the nuclear option, of course, if you mess up and you're not sure why things aren't symmetrical, is just get them where they should be. Move to the top view. Right mouse drag to select half of your model. Delete it, and then mirror the entire thing across. That will do it too if you're having trouble with things not matching up. Let's go to the right view. Actually, let's go to the Topology tab and go to the right view. Turn on our backdrop items here and take a look and see how we've done. Not too shabby. So that should do it, folks. We now have a cockpit cut into our shape. And you can see just how powerful this retopology workflow could be. We're going to be using it a lot as we add more and more detail to this body. All right, so I definitely recommend spending some time practicing retopology. Create a mesh, create another mesh, and practice making other kinds of shapes on top of a background mesh using the topology pen. All right, have fun.